The Tigard Hotel was the Grand Hotel of Elkins. It was built at the turn of the century. We had a series of community meetings, and at the end of those meetings, Woodlands had agreed to not only purchase the building, but that we would look at converting it back to a boutique hotel. And some of the hardest pieces to get together are those very preliminary pieces when you're scoping out the project. And that's where the Brownfield Center in downtown Appalachia has been really key on this project, as well as other projects we've worked on over the years.
2005, Senate Bill 603, deep down inside of it, there was the establishment of the Brownfield Centers, one at WVU and one at Marshall. These Brownfield Centers, we didn't realize when they first got started that there was nothing like this in the whole country.
A brownfield is defined by EPA as a property whose redevelopment is being hindered or slowed by the presence or potential presence of environmental contamination. So we work a lot with community stakeholders, local governments, and economic development agencies to take an old blighted site and a liability in a community to make it an asset.
Brownfields is about the quarter-acre gas station property, the dry cleaner lot, that vacant property that nobody knows about. All those are brownfields that can be effectively addressed and looked at and then hopefully repurposed for something positive.
We are blessed with mountains and beauty, but we were not blessed with flat land and developable land. And the land that we had already been developed, had been used by industry, and a good way to look at that was to say, how do we get the land that we have that has some contamination to it back into productivity?
Senator Plymel in the legislature, Ken Ellison at West Virginia DEP at the time, put their heads together and came up with this idea of these two centers that would help communities access that federal funding, educate the general public about brownfields, help identify sites, and work with the DEP, work with the development office, and work together to help educate communities and redevelop those brownfields.
The center at the time, we had to be more optimistic and more risk-taking than other entities, because when the phone calls came in and said, hey, I'm interested in this project, what can you tell us about it, or can you help us? The people that were calling us at the centers had already been told no over and over and over again. So it was really a belief that I think George and I both shared, that if we collaborated together, that we could serve all the communities of West Virginia better. We needed to be safe environmentally first. We have to be able to make a good economic development pitch, and we have to have a champion. And by doing those things together, then we can grow and do all these other great things.
You know, a city manager of a small town of 10 or 15,000 people, which is big for us, is not going to have the expertise in everything that they need to know. And so having people at the centers that have that brownfield expertise that can step in and advise and support is really critical.
When we were first getting started, it was all about writing grants and helping people get money. As I always say, if you don't apply for a grant, you got a 100% chance of not getting it. So we were doing those kinds of things early on, but then all the other components that started coming into play, and that's when we realized, you know, the brownfield funding side of it is the first money in on a lot of projects. It really helps jumpstart projects and helps get them rolling. And as we started getting into it, we realized, gee, this is unique, and this is something really different. And a whole lot of folks know about Little Old West Virginia and their brownfields program, all because of that vision that Senator Plymel and Ken Ellison and some of those folks had early on to make this happen.
We can bring the services and investment in the early costs to analyze what these structures need or lack, or what codes need to be met, and the variety of services that need to be brought to the table in order to successfully engage in a full redevelopment process for these structures.
You know, it takes a really long time to go from hearing about the potential of a project or hearing about a property that needs some remediation, and then sort of shepherding that property all the way through the process. And so one of the things that we work really closely on with the Brownfield Assistance Centers is to identify those properties at whatever stage in that process that they're in, and then follow along with those properties and see where we can plug in.
I think every year the Brownfields Assistance Center and DEP becomes more and more of a cohesive team working together and collaborating with each other, and whatever we hear we share with you and vice versa. And so we're able to have a greater impact in our communities that way.
There's no way we could accomplish some of these projects on our own. We just can't, and I'm sure that's that way. Maybe there's a community or two that can, ours can't. And so having that engagement and that partner support, just absolutely awesome.
One of the coolest things about working at the Brownfield Center is that we can try and help solve the mystery, the part that folks just don't know offhand, and kind of bridge the on-the-ground activity with the behind-the-scenes environmental considerations that inevitably come into play.
It's just a mutually beneficial relationship where we can use our grants and help as much as we can throughout the state, and they connect us to really great projects. We could not do what we do without the Brownfields Assistance Centers, and I think it's something that really propels West Virginia ahead of other states.
I think out of everything that Brownfields does, which is amazing across the board, from the grant writing assistance all the way to actual financial assistance on your projects, the partnerships that they bring to the table because of this statewide experience of Brownfields is the most impactful piece to any of our projects and anything that we want to get done that Brownfields has been able to do.
The Stats Building was constructed, we think, about 1920, 1922. It was designed by the first registered African-American architect, John C. Norman, and it had been derelict over the last 20 years or so, sort of abandoned slowly. And my father and I got together and sort of came up with this creative financing model along with some great entities, including Brownfields. So this wall is locked in with the one upstairs so that the chases are easier for utilities and stuff.
That was all the historic tax credit kind of requirements to meet all those?
Had to get at least like the footprint laid out, like where the walls would be for the part 2. Brownfields helped us get drawings essentially, and that allowed us to pursue financing, apply for new market tax credits, for historic tax credits, and it was tremendous for the project. It just would not have happened without the support of Brownfields.
I think that this was the first time that we actually showed this can be done, this is how we see it can be done, and it's worked very well.
Having a whole cohort now of communities and people who are trying to address these projects, figuring out how do you make this work in West Virginia, in very rural communities, it's been key for us. I mean, this kind of peer exchange is exactly how we've been able to move the needle in Elkins, and I think how we're going to be able to move it forward as a whole state.
It's really rewarding when you get to work with a community or a developer, and then, you know, months or years later, you get to drive by that site and see it in a brand new reuse, and it's improving the quality of life for our citizens. It's creating jobs. It might be creating parks for our kids, and it's just really rewarding to know that you had a part of that.